Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mount Gretna School of Arts lecture series. Hosted here in the Mount Gretna's Pennsylvania, Chautauqua. I want to thank Stinson Straub for his support of our lecture series this summer, and Purpose One for their support of our this 2024 summer season. Our school, it's a niche-based school that's focused on painting outside and connecting with nature and learning about the nature of seeing. We have a brand new faculty every summer that we recruit from colleges and universities all across the country, and that kind of tracks with our student body too, that competes to get in from all over the place, really. I went on about, Cezanne famously saying with an apple, he would shock Paris. How much of an understatement, that humble understatement that seems today. With a plein air painting program, Mount Gretna School of Art will astonish the art education community. And I was thinking about that because it's a plein air painting program. On the one hand, it's such a humble idea to go out with a French easel and paint. It's something I think I remember learning once I got here, that the everyday passerby feels connected with what's happening on the easel, all the way up to the most sophisticated, highbrow conversations about art I've been around. And if you look at the artwork that's showing today, I mean, hordes of it deals with landscape issues, let alone just going outside to paint. On the one hand, I really do want it to be a humble French easel painting program, but I think the students experience this too, which until you've kind of been here as a student or a teacher, it's really hard to get your head around, but it reaches deep into what it means to be a painter. And I think the students really do gain a lot of confidence and strength in their own work through the program. And it's pretty incredible because I don't think it could have happened anywhere else like Mount Gretna to open up cottages and spaces to a school like this. I know the students are grateful. 12 years of students now, and I sure am. I want to introduce now Catherine Lepp. Thrilled to have back. She helped us out in 2018 as a drawing instructor, and Heidi and I really loved having her here, and did a great job in the drawing section, and then super excited to have her come back and take over the painting section as my closer this summer. And she's had the perfect impact at the perfect moment on the student body and getting them to think about color in a, I think, better way. You could really see those paintings standing out at the student show Sunday. I'm going to read a little bit about her from her bio now. Catherine Lepp is a Brooklyn-based artist, originally from Sheffield in the UK. She graduated from Manchester Polytechnic with a BFA in painting. She is an alumnus of the New York Studio School of Drawing, Painting, and Sculpture, which is near and dear to my heart as well, and the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture summer residency. She's an adjunct in drawing and painting faculty at FIT and the New York Studio School. And I'd like to pass it on to her now. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Mount Gretna School of Art, for having me back. It's an absolute pleasure to be here again and meeting all the students and working with you on painting the landscape. My lecture today is my journey of figures in the landscape. So I'm from, yes, the UK, a small island in the middle of the North Sea, surrounded by weather. So I'm going to show you paintings that have influenced me before I came to the US. So here we have Turner from 1812. This is the snowstorm, Hannibal and his army crossing the Alps. So again, most of Turner's paintings are about weather, large landscapes, large weather, and small people. And you can see more or less. So this is Hannibal. Here he is on his elephant, all the way in the distance. And then the emotion is created, by this incredible big spiral. As we were looking at that Fibonacci, how to use a spiral within a landscape to create an impact. This is almost, like a giant wave. So here we have Turner. I'm going to show you a few more. This is another painting when I first saw, really blew me away with just the limited amount of colors used to express this burial at sea, the burning of a boat on these on this like glassy ocean, and the amount of white that was used with the black, and how much emotion you can create just from using black and white and a little bit of red and yellow and blue right here, this moment in the center. Here we have another amazing painting that's in the National Gallery in London. And this is Turner's Rain, Steam and Speed. So again, what are we dealing with? The weather, the steam of the engine, of the industrialization. So this is one of the first trains crossing the bridge here. You've got small people. Again, if you just take your time, little people in this giant landscape. And I love that sense of scale of having the small person on the boat, the people on the beach. And then it's in the train, there are meant to be all these people with top hats. They're riding the train without a top, and the fire isn't inside the engine. He's painted it on the outside, which isn't possible, but he's giving you that feeling of the burning furnace. Also in front of the train, but you can't really see here, and it's faded because it was painted in alizarin red, would be down here somewhere, is a hare. So the train was running supposedly at the same speed as a hare. And the hare is like an ancient symbol of England and spring and all different kinds of things, but speeds. The hare was the fastest thing until the train came along. So again, looking at the colors here, what do we have? Red, yellow, and blue. So the way he builds his paintings using these primary colors, and then using the power of white when he needs to create atmosphere. Ooh, here's another one. Again, red, yellow, and blue, white as well for atmosphere. And Turner was renowned for hanging his paintings in the Salon or the Royal Academy, and then coming along at the end and adding a bit of red. So possibly this cow was added last, or even the hare. And most artists would look at it, his contemporaries, and just say, this is a mushy mess, what's going on? And then he would add the red, draw at the end, and create this incredible scene. Skies and ocean, right? So again, being this island nation, always not far from the water, always aware of the clouds. These are John Constable's skyscapes that were very influential on me when I saw them, looking at his ground, right? So he worked on a pink ground to create these beautiful blue skies, which I've talked to you a lot about, like working with your undercolor or what your wash is before you put the colors of red, yellow, or blue on top. Here's another fabulous John Constable. This is from Brighton. Again, mark making to create the feeling of space and weather, and along with the great horizontal of the horizon there and the water. So when I went to college in Manchester, I became very interested in the Welsh artist Gwen John and her very beautiful, quiet color palettes of little attic rooms that she painted when she was in Paris. Also, I was inspired by her life. She was a women painter, obviously amongst a lot of men. Her brother, Augustus John, was much more famous, bohemian with several wives. And she ran away with one of the wives and walked from Paris to Rome in about 1906. So when I was a student, I decided I was going to go off and I hitchhiked from Manchester all the way to Paris and then Rome just to see art. And her paintings, this one on the left was the one I first saw. It was in the museum, Sheffield Museum, my local art gallery, and I thought these were magical paintings. And again, what she does with white, how she assembles a painting, the divisions, the intimacy. I painted a lot of still lives very similar to this, trying to be when John was a student. I also discovered Winifred Nicholson, and she was a painter who was married to Ben Nicholson, who was an abstract artist. And she really developed this language of prismatic color that I also became very interested in. Using prisms, looking at the color around the edges of objects and how light refracted around or broke up around the object. Here are two more of her paintings. The one on the left really inspired me to make a lot of paintings. The idea of a window, looking through a window, what's inside, what's outside. And again, the glow of trying to see the light around the objects, an imagined light, prismatic light, breaking the colors down and using all the pigments she could to create this atmosphere. Another influence was Henry Moore, Barbara Hepworth. This is a great Henry Moore here. And Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon and his triptychs, when you first saw this, it really blew me away. If you're ever in London, in the Tate Britain, they now have this great room with all Francis Bacon's and Henry Moore together. So they kind of work together as this post-war angst, how to deal with horror, grief, tragedy. And again, the use of color or lack of color to create emotion. And again, he was thinking of Guernica, Picasso, how you can create so much more emotion maybe with black and white than with using color, apart from the blood red background or red. Here's a few more Francis Bacon's. Again, use of incredible black and white. What do you have if you're just working with black and white? You have texture, you have opacity, you have thickness, thinness. And also what really influenced me about Francis Bacon was, again, what he could do with the figure, how he could distort the figure and you still got the emotion of what was going on. And again, his triptychs here, his black painting triptychs. Figure sat on the chair and the shadows kind of oozing out of the people, or the essence, what's fractured, what's left of the figure. Another favorite from Yorkshire, fellow Yorkshireman, David Hockney. So when I first saw this one, again, it's a masterpiece in painting, color, warms, cools, organization of space. But when you actually see this in life, you realize that the ocean, the water, the pool is pure linen. Everything else is primed, but the water isn't. So he's tried to really deal with the water in a different way within the rest of that painting. So, as I said, just the pool area is raw linen and it's kind of stained and put on in a completely different way to the rest of the painting. And I just love that also, that idea of one person outside and then the metamorphosis of the person in the water. This is another fabulous one. Again, that whole bottom half is raw canvas and stained. So it gives us a completely different feeling to the top half of the painting. Again, the fantastic organization of the shapes, the device of the steps. And it's just a very smart painting to me. That really influenced me. And the two pairs of shoes, or the clothing on the top and the discarded shoes, to give that feeling of a person in the space. Ooh, all right. So a little commercial break here. So I arrived in New York and I was a nanny and working on the Upper East Side. And then I got a job as an artist assistant for an artist called Ori Hofmeckler. And he got this job with Absolute Vodka we had to reproduce these classical paintings and put a bottle of vodka in there. So you can see instead of the milk jug, we have the bottle. So I had to do a forgery. I had to stretch the canvas, find the burlap, put a surface on it, pre-crack it, and then do the painting. And he kind of finished the face and put the bottle in and did some of the details. These are two more that I did. We have Edward Manet on the left and Rousseau on the right. So these were, I did these in my kitchen, at my kitchen table. They weren't to life size, they were smaller. And it was fun to do because, obviously you learn so much from copying or what we call transcriptions of a painting and understanding the organization. So these were really great to do. Oop, there we have Absolute Courant on the left. That's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And so is the Toulouse-Lautrec on the right. The Toulouse-Lautrec was the hardest one to do because it was gouache on cardboard. So I had to completely replicate how that was made, and you couldn't make a mistake with gouache, as you know. So this is one of the ways that artists, we do make a living painting paintings for other people who make all the money and get their name on it. But there you go, you learn a lot from working for other artists. Okay, starting with my work. So this is when I was at the studio school. I'd been did my BFA in Manchester. I came to New York and I didn't really paint for probably 12 to 15 years until I got into the studio school. And this is obviously very inspired by Bernard. This is my son in the bath with his little water pistol. And again, taking that idea from David Hockney, from Bonnard, the transformation of a figure in water, and then using that domesticity or the idea of Gwen John and the intimacy of a space. So then I progressed out of the bathtub into swimming pools and trying to work with a square within a square and having, that figure on the edge, half in, half out. And again, you can see me experimenting here with that lemon yellow underneath, yellow ochre underneath before I'm putting the local color on top. So then the water starts to change. And again, trying to get into the emotion of the water. What can the water be? One person in, one person out, and the fracturing of the body, and really just making the water up, right? And water can be anything, which is what I've been talking to the students about, the emotional dimension that water can be. It can be safe, it can be scary, it brings different feeling to lots of different people who experience your paintings. So after the studio school, this painting that got me into Skowhegan, which I was really pleased to go, an amazing residency you should apply for, a 9-week program in Maine. I got the post-degree blues. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I didn't know how to deal with color. I didn't know how to paint anymore suddenly. So I moved to monochrome, very large drawings in color on big pieces of paper, and just trying to get back into that rhythm of trying to find an image, seeking an image, and seeing where I could make a painting. So there's quite a few of these that came out. Again, just drawing, adding a different color, dealing with what's above the surface, and then the complete refraction what's below the surface. These were done at another great residency where I could work large again. So I do like to work very big. I feel that's my size is working about 4x5 or bigger, and that the figures are often 3/4 to almost life size if they can be. These are again oil on paper, and I did these at the Vermont Studio Center, which you get really nice big studios there. So I did some even bigger than this, but I just wanted to show these to you. I discovered oil sticks. They were a great way with drawing specifically directly onto the paper. Then I went back to canvas. This is a big diptych. These were kind of meant to be ceiling paintings. I love Tintoretto. Previously, you always have the idea of you're on the edge of the water, you're looking down at somebody. These, I wanted to have that feeling you were underneath. Are they in the sky? Are you in the water? Where are you? A kind of disorientating feeling of the figures and water. So oil painting, oil stick, and then really twisting the figures, as you can see the Bacon influence of what you need. A foot, an arm. This is another diptych, just trying to disorientate the viewer as to where you are, where the figures are, and they're being enveloped by a wave or a cloud or whatever it kind of became. Here is another one, whether this is at the water's edge, just at that moment where the water meets the sand. I was trying to get that feeling here. For those drawings, for the water paintings, I did a lot, went back to monochrome again, and I drew these. These are fairly large as well. And these are just using 3 color inks. I think I've got ultramarine, cobalt, and a cerulean and I kind of really got obsessed with drawing as many details as possible to get that feeling of entering the water and what that might feel like as a viewer and as a person in the water. This is the giant scroll I did that's, 114 by 60 to try and get see how these figures could all work together as a scroll. Different moments of submersion or exiting the water. This is a close-up of a smaller one. Again, really trying to understand the solidity of that knee, from knee to the face, to how the water or the marks then affecting the body. And I was also, as you can see, abandoning the rectangle, right? Just trying to get these pockets of moment without having it anchored by any edges. So here you can see the painting. Of course, once you put it onto a rectangle, onto a large canvas, then I did have to deal with those corners. And this is the painting that came from that drawing. Another large 5x6. Here's another one. And now I'm starting to get even more obsessed with the surface. I think I worked on this for possibly a year, non-stop, adding layers after layers and just getting, trying to bring as many different color. How could I paint water without just relying upon blue and green and white? And what kind of water was it? Is it the ocean? Is it a lake? And throwing everything in it. Here's another one about the surface. Really trying to paint that surface again with using a minimal amount of blue. And again, thinking of Turner. So there's a lot of paintings in between. I'm just showing, because this is over a long period of time that I was painting the swimmers. And you can see some of these figures that I've been drawing over and over again. And I made this triptych, trying not to, acknowledging the rectangle, and really getting into that mark making and using purples and greens to give that emotion of the water, thinking maybe about Joan Mitchell along with de Kooning, lots of different artists I'm trying to think about and their process and how I made these figures. So I stopped painting the figures, these, in 2011. I had a big break of painting them, but in 2019, I was asked to show the swimmers at a gallery out in Sag Harbor. And I thought I had loads of paintings, giant paintings, that would be enough. And they wanted more. They wanted at least 22 paintings. So I had to get back into the swimmers. At least 9 years after stopping, after thinking I'd got to the point, these paintings were all those other paintings kind of led up to this. Once I'd got to this, I thought, I'm done. I'm not going to paint these swimmers again. This is it. These are the paintings I wanted to make. Over. But they said they needed more. So I had to get back into the subject again. Now my children are completely grown, giant men. And how do you get back into it? So I had to look at my old paintings. I painted from paintings and I started again, much smaller, hoping they would sell, the big paintings, and working flat at a canvas and really just putting the paint on and moving it around with a palette knife, scraping in and having lots of fun with. Actually, I really enjoyed doing these, getting back into them. At first, I was had no idea what I was going to do, but these smaller ones, again, working from previous paintings. This is that same one, trying to deal with somebody at the edge. Again, these are using some oil sticks for the white and limiting the color palette without trying to use too much blue. These are squares. These are, again, 24 by 24. So now the figure starts to really have an impact with its square and its edges. And it's, as we've been working on this week, how much fun it is to work with a square and how abstract that space is and how you can put the figure in there tumbling upside down, a little bit cheeky, but just these are also like the memory of my children. They're no longer my children, they're an idea of what they were like, right? Big red hair and goggles or big feet. And here's two more, trying to do a surfer. And then the one on the left, trying to just feet coming out the water, trying to just climb out. So in between all those swimmers, I started working on crowds and figures. These are scrolls that I would do, again, at my kitchen table. At different times, I've had studios, nice big studios, where I've been able to do great big paintings. And at other times, you have your kitchen table. So I would just start at one end and unroll the roll of vellum. These are on vellum. And I'd start at the top and slowly work down to the bottom, adding these figures, repeating the figures, and trying to work out how to deal with masses of figures piled on top of each other, trying to seek an image that might make into a good painting, because not all drawings can make good paintings. Here they're separated, and I start to group the figures together, finding the negative space, and they're not just completely piled up. They have more of a literal sense of space and wondering, again, you're kind of hovering, thinking about where the viewer is in relation to the scroll, that we're kind of hovering above the figures here. This is kind of a close-up. I love working with Sumi ink on the vellum with a really couple of old pens or chopsticks sharpened. So you get this kind of, it collects on the surface, it holds the surface in a different way. So from all those drawings, I made this big painting. So this is started out as a diptych, then it became a triptych, and you can see I worked on it for maybe 3 years. At this time, I did have a big studio again, and I was able to work from all those drawings to make this painting. I didn't want to deal with flesh or flesh tones, and I chose a palette of 2 or 3 reds, 2 or 3 blues, maybe a purple, and people would get drawn in, people would get painted out, people become more important sometimes. This was constantly changing over several years until it got to this point. Color started to come back in, flesh tones started to come back in. This is of a tomato festival, I think in Spain. So I had to acknowledge the red and deal with that massive amount of tomato red. And what I did love about this was, you know, they were completely covered in tomatoes. You couldn't really see the flesh, and you've got all these hands flying around trying to protect their heads. And again, looking from above, where are you? You know, maybe looking down, floating above these figures. This is another one from the Tomato Festival. And then I got back into landscape. I was done with people for a while, or big people. And I went back to the Turner idea, or Psy even, the big landscapes with little people, and embedding the people into very, very intricate landscapes. And I felt like I had to try and draw every layer, every nuance, find all the patterning, and really build a drawing out of marks. And I was lucky enough to go to Hawaii, and it's this incredible new world that's being born all the time there. And this is a black sand beach. And this is a view from, you're in the water, looking back at the beach, the people on it. This is a painting I made from that. And again, working with highly saturated colors to evoke my memory of the place, working with blues on reds, yellows on oranges, greens again on reds to make this painting, and then the power of the white when needed for the dead trees there. And this is another drawing I did, made from several drawings. The people are here at the edge of the lava flats, looking at the smoke. And in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see Pele, the goddess. This is meant to be the last place that she put her foot. Supposedly she walked across Asia, and wherever she put her foot, there was a volcano. And so wherever you go, there are these little shrines to Pele. This isn't a great picture of this painting, but I made a painting from that drawing, and I didn't feel like it was big enough. So I added a whole other panel on the top and continued with the cloud upwards. And again, that idea that we were talking about of Hans Hofmann, of trying for the painting to project its own light and its own color. And again, working with opposite colors, right? A red ground to then have the blue on top, or a blue ground to then have that red. And there are some greens in there. And some people look at these and they think they're, you know, about the apocalypse, but it was an amazing place that there's this new life that's constantly growing. And you can see some of the greenery that's starting to bud around the volcano out of the volcanic lava fields. This is old world. So I went back to the UK. This is not far from Sheffield. We have access to what's called the moors, which is not many trees, but lots of heather and really old rounded volcanoes that were there long, long, long time ago. There are some people in here. Again, they're kind of embedded and getting into as I said, the fabric, the pattern making of what heather looks like, what a mountain would be, and maybe going a bit crazy with the clouds and the rocks. This is a painting I made of that. A lot of the colors, again, from memory, dealing with the water in a different way now. Okay, so these are, again, part of this series. I started working a bit smaller. These are 18 by 36, working with vertical, panoramic, and then also horizontal. And these are of in the Catskills. So I did lots of drawings of this waterfall. And I started adding, again, as I say, people and working with yellows, reds, blues, and then adding the green at the end. Here's the same setting, but done the other way. So those two paintings are the same size, just one's horizontal and one's vertical. Go back to New World. So again, working smaller on board this time, trying to see what this painting this way would look like on board, and that nice hard feel that you get from board, and how the color can build up, again, with transparency and opacity for the painting to give off its own light. Here's a series of 3, oil on board. The one on the left, again, is back to Yorkshire, and the other 2 are from Hawaii. More vertical, so I think these are 2 foot by 6 foot. And really getting into that journey from, where are you? Where are your feet at the edge as you look across the land, life world being created, and then up to, it created these incredible clouds, sulfur clouds, and the colors would change as they got higher and higher. And then trying to get that reflected light pushing back at you. And hopefully you can see a little bit of how the layering of the color works on here, from the warms to the cools, and the blues to the reds. Oh, another commercial break. So again, as to support yourself, you have to make art, maybe commercially or not. I worked in fashion for a long time as on sets, making for photo shoots. And luckily I started to get hired more for painting the sets. On the right, you can see, I think I did maybe 13 Sean Scullys that they put dress shirts on to match. And then in the middle, these were lots of fun to do all these drips and create, these walls for texture for photo shoot. And then on the left is a big backdrop, pretty big. Here's the backdrop again. And here, oh, there it is. You can see how big it is. And again, I did that like as an exquisite corpse. I didn't have a giant space, so I'd paint a bit at a time, pull it down, paint the next bit, and pull it down and keep moving. And here's another one. Again, using all the things that I know in painting, putting the pink down before I put a green on top to give it that really great feeling. All right, back to the figure. One of the things at the studio school, they have this, they give out these 5 by 5 little pieces of great paper, and they ask you to draw on them for the anonymous as a masterpiece. So I love the format of the 5 by 5, and I made these 5 on the top, and I didn't hand them in. I kept them because I really liked them, and they ended up, I decided that these could become great paintings. I think the ones on the bottom, the landscapes, some of those went for the auction. So even though it's in a tiny little 5 by 5, I start off with a very, very hard pencil, like a 2H, and I draw it out and then slowly get softer and softer, but you can still see the residue of the hard pencil, but they start to feel almost like etchings. Here you can see one blown up. But because you've got really good paper and you pushing in, it kind of leaves this mark that you can see. in the background and on the flesh. So those made these big paintings. I worked on these for quite a while. These are not very good photographs. These are very hard to photograph yourself. So always hire somebody professionally, because you get bad glow like I've got on that left, and you really can't get to see them. But the people became shadow people. Again, I didn't want to deal with flesh. I wanted to just deal with that essence, that shadow of a person. Again, almost thinking of Francis Bacon and how he dealt with the figures and the outline and how they're in the landscape. Also, obviously treating the landscape like a cake, like a layers, and segmenting different sections off, trying to deal with different planes, nature. Coming up to the pandemic, this is the one painting I worked on for the whole time. And as you can see, I went back to the crowds. I went back to red, yellow, and blue. And I decided to try and take on flesh again, flesh-colored human. And the blue, we took, the blue that is famous in the Uccellos, that incredible lapis lazuli blue. How could I make that blue just hold the space and hold the figure? And the way I did that was layers and layers and layers of very, very thin washes. So from previously working thick, this is very slow, very thin layer build up. And the more you use one color in different ways and you're thinning it down, it starts to reflect light in a very different way to being thick. I got to this point here. And then I couldn't deal with the flesh anymore. So I got rid of the flesh colors and started playing around with other figures from mosh pits or flying figures being held up. And again, just dealing with, this time, red and blue and anatomy and the perfection of anatomy. But again, I'm working from photograph, from these. For the first time, I'm really working directly from photographs. And I found it very, very, very limiting and very stilting. And I started getting too obsessed with the exactness of the figure, how perfect the weight was. I mean, forever redrawing, trying to get that head angle just right. And I keep turning the figures around, playing with their gravity and non-gravity. And I kind of painted myself into a hole here, and I got really a bit disillusioned with working with the figure. So I got rid of all the color. And this is the most recent work that I started this January in black and white on acrylic. And I was like, what figure? I want somebody in my studio. This is my studio space. Who would come sit with me? Do I want to do a self-portrait? I've got a mirror. It was really tough to think of who to do. So I was a bit desperate. And so I made a figure, and you can see her, them. It's on the left from pairs of tights, a few pillows, lots of string, clamps, and everything else. But what I really loved about this figure was that the inertia, the fatigue, the kind of like, this figure cannot stand up, right? This figure can't really do anything other than be propped up. And that was also a very close to a feeling I was having at the time of incredible fatigue, aches, pains, whatever, health issues, and then putting it into this person, that the feet didn't necessarily have to work, but they could be positioned formally. And again, this was all hand-drawn using bits of string, lots of rulers. And now that I'm not dealing with color, black on white, white on black, thick and thin, drawing with chalk, wax pen, and really just having the best time creating this space from a blank canvas, right? Creating the windows, creating the mirror, adding the plants, and making my own world. I did like 5 of these all at once. It just came out. And there's a couple more. I think, oh, the one on the left is the first one, so that's maybe a bit overworked. Again, I apologize for the quality. These are from my iPhone. I haven't had them. They're not finished. These are all works in progress. But I think I wanted to show you guys where I am and how my process is at the moment. I did find this great paintbrush that I think de Kooning used, which is a liner, 5 inches of brush and a tiny handle. And you can really makes this beautiful lyrical mark. It's meant to be for perfection of drawing straight lines, but you can also use it to create beautiful, twisty, bendy lines. Again, thinking of Francis Bacon and the shadow. So we have the figure, and then I also use like a black sweater jumper to hang over to create the shadow of the person that's leaking out. You can see it on the bottom of this one. It's not been painted in black yet. So we've got like 2 real arms, and then you have the shadow person descending or coming out of the chair, stool. So a gallery came to look at these pieces, and they were very excited about them, except for the fact they're on paper. And they said, well, can you do it on canvas? And I'm like, okay, well, I can't really afford to make the stretchers. So I stretched this giant piece, I think it's 12 feet, on my wall. Just started putting it together with the idea that it might become 3, but it's kind of, I don't think it can now. It's just one big painting. And I put some of the figures that I'd already worked on, some new figures. And this is kind of, again, you know, I just really enjoyed having this blank black canvas. I painted it completely black first with black gesso, and then went at it and created, you know, this very formal space, and then started to put my figures in, and then the plants that I have there. And we've got some arms on the floor, detached. So I made those with coat hangers, as you can see. And then the legs are just hanging up with a clip by the door as my fan, my watering can. And that's kind of where I'm at now. I think that's the last one.
Awesome.
Your very large format, is that kind of related to, or it's related to this bigness that you want to evoke and that you're inspired by with the toners and things? Or is it more about like how you move when you're painting, like you want to make big, like how you work?
It's directly related to my body, yes, and what marks I'm comfortable working with and what scale. So I can either work very small, 5 by 5, and then scale that up. But I have a hard time with in between, or I get too fussy. Like I find some of those landscapes that are smaller they are, the more obsessed I become. Whereas when I work larger, it works better for my brain, my body, and the scale feels more sincere for me in the right kind of space scale. Hi.
Process of like starting the swimming.
Which swimmers? The early swimmers? So so the early swimmers were as a parent or as a watching your children in the water, drawing them while they're there, getting not just seeing them playing, but after the studio school, you see the squares and you see the shapes and you get into all the interactions. It's not just them swimming. So I would draw and draw. And then again, not every drawing would make an interesting painting. So it would take me a long time to find an image that I thought was interesting enough to scale up and put on a large canvas. So then I would, again, working small, I would draw it on big, and then really just get into working from the back to the front, building slowly in layers, trying the darkest colors first, then the lightest. Some I'd start with light colors and dark. And with it being water, I could just experiment with mark making, and I wasn't bound by all these other things that I'd been bound by in school, such as planes and form and all that kind of stuff. So it was much more a process orientated thing. And sometimes if the figure got too realistic, then I'd have to break that figure and work a way of making the marks that were interesting to me without relying too much on a photograph or photographic idea, because sometimes I would work from little small photographs as well and see how the figure could work.
And then later it seemed like you doing these blue paintings that were very thickly painted with the red hair and the big feet. How did you approach that work or keep that going in the studio?
That was just all from memory. So, you know, the idea, I guess, is that after painting the swimmers for 10 years, I didn't need a photograph or a drawing or anything anymore. It was all in here. And using that smaller format, again, I didn't have a studio at the time. I just had tables. And I would just squeeze the paint out and really just move it around on that surface. And I worked, as you could see, I had like two figures. One was a V shape upside down, and it was the same figure if you see on the floor, but they just turned around. Like sometimes it's upside down, it's the right way up, but it was the same basic idea. And then just trying some with more feet, some with less, more water.
Your comment about the botany things in those person.
Oh yes, I love Joan Erdley's landscape, Scottish painter, and she did some great paintings of children in Glasgow as well. Yes, there's nothing like seeing a painting, right? And I react completely to the surface. Seeing a Joan Erdley, I couldn't spend enough time with them, really looking again at the layers and how she worked from the back to the front, and also the large marks that she would have as a sense of scale right up on the picture plane. So she really throws those marks down. It seems randomly, but they're very, very beautifully thought out in the sense of scale and the changes of color that she creates and textures, right? She's got lots of textures. So like the David Hockney, seeing that difference of what a painting can be, and it's not this flat thing. It has this other life that you can only experience in person.
I just wanted to ask about, I was thinking about in some other paintings, how like there's areas that feel like more like heavy formed in versus areas of contour where it really feels like you're drawing. I guess I was wondering, do you think about the relationship between the things that feel a little more temporal drawn in versus the heavier forms of your paintings, and if that
it's something that just kind of happens through the process. So drawing is the basis of everything for me. You can't draw enough before you paint. And I sometimes hold off on the painting with the drawing and the structure, and I really get a bit overly into the drawing. But the fun thing about these black and white is, yes, that decision of what gets filled in and what doesn't, what is absent and what is form, right? So is the stool a form or is it an absence? Are the fig trees, fig leaves, they're just outline, they're not painted in. So it's a fun game, mental game of moving around. Is the window a positive or is it a negative? I've reversed, what do you reverse for your painting and what is reality? So just choosing it. So I find by drawing, then you can choose then what you want to fill in. Do you want the jug to be white the mirror to be white. One mirror is black and reflecting. The smaller mirror is just reflecting light. One plant I might get into, like the one on the right, it's a zebra plant, I might get into all its texture, whereas the other is just pure drawing. And how to keep building that drawing on top of drawing one way, drawing the other way. And again, playing around with what's opaque and what's translucent, and how far you can take an object before you kill it, right? Before it gets too over-explained. So again, that's why I love working on 3 things at once, or triptychs became really important for me, because I wouldn't overly obsess over one image. So like I said, some of those landscapes, I was just working on one at a time, or if I'm working on one painting, I just get a little bit too obsessed with, or sometimes I feel it goes too far. So it takes you a long time for me to realize when to stop a drawing or a painting, take a rest and enjoy it for what it is before I go any further with it. So having, again, 3 figures, not only do they talk to each other, but then I can get one-to-one level. Oh, I like that. Let's try that on that one. And these ones now have like black stockings. That might come or that might go. But the other ones previously didn't. So, it's this constant playing with the positive and then the negative. And that's all you have with black and white,
As we're moving through the lecture and got to that, the girl in the blue bikini floating weightless above the moss pit. And I was thinking to myself, well, as a 90s Hollywood male, I spent some time in those mosh pits. As soon as you hit that painting of the drawing that's stockings, I felt like right away that kind of physical empathy with that. I was like, oh man, something felt very real to me. And I don't even think if it was a live model there, that it would have been as effective. Physical empathy thing in a very different way, and that the contrast and just those 3 slides meant a lot.
Yeah, I think I had to work on this one for a year to realize that's not the painting that I wanted to make, or the human, it was just such a struggle to do this, and the slope and the weight, and you can still see all the drawing. I keep going back to the drawing so that you can feel the armature still underneath that figure. And I had to go through all that to then, I think, be liberated to know how little I needed, or how much a figure is more realistic, more emotional, or more, empathetic by not having a head and having, a different kind of feel to a body. No, thank you, Jay.